The bass thrummed through the floor of neon nights, vibrating up through my stilettos as I adjusted my black dress for the third time. I'd chosen it specifically because it hugged every curve, because it made my legs look endless, because it was the kind of dress that demanded attention. Tonight, I needed attention. "You look incredible, Kly," Sabine shouted over the music, raising her cosmopolitan in a toast. My younger sister had always been my biggest cheerleader, especially when it came to reminding me that I was still desirable, still worth pursuing. I glanced across our high-top table at Edric, my husband of 8 years, who was nursing his beer and checking his phone for the 4th time in 10 minutes. He'd barely looked at me since we'd arrived, barely acknowledged the effort I'd put into getting ready. The new highlights in my blonde hair, the expensive makeup, the dress that had cost more than our grocery budget, none of it seemed to register with him anymore. "Thanks, babe," I replied to Sabine, but my eyes stayed on Edric. Some people don't seem to notice. Edric looked up from his phone, his brown eyes tired. "What?" "Nothing," I said, taking a long sip of my martini. "Just talking to my sister." The club was packed for a Saturday night, bodies pressed together on the dance floor, laughter and conversation mixing with the pounding music. I watched couples grinding against each other, hands roaming, lost in the moment. When was the last time Edric and I had danced like that? When was the last time he'd looked at me with hunger instead of obligation? "I'm going to get another round," Sabine announced, sliding off her bar stool. "Same for everyone." I nodded, but Edric shook his head. "I'm good. Actually, I think we should probably head home soon. It's getting late." "Late?" I stared at him in disbelief. "It's barely 11. We just got here an hour ago. Isla has soccer practice in the morning. We should get some sleep." Our 7-year-old daughter was spending the night at my mother-in-law's house specifically, so we could have a night out. I'd arranged everything, had been looking forward to this for weeks, and he wanted to leave already. "Miriam loves having Isla overnight. She's fine." I reached across the table, trying to take his hand, but he pulled away to check his phone again. "Come on, Ed. When's the last time we went out together? Just had fun." "We're out now." "Are we? Because you've been staring at that phone all night." He sighed, finally putting the device face down on the table. "Sorry, it's just work stuff. The Morrison account is—" "It's Saturday night," I interrupted. "Can't the Morrison account wait until Monday?" Before he could answer, Sabine returned with fresh drinks and a grin that told me she'd been chatting with someone at the bar. "Guess what? That gorgeous guy over there wants to buy you a drink, Kly." I followed her gaze to the bar, where a tall, dark-haired man in a fitted black shirt was watching our table. When our eyes met, he smiled and raised his beer in a small salute. My stomach fluttered with the thrill of being noticed, of being desired. "That's Victor," Sabine continued, sliding back onto her stool. "He's at my gym. Total catch, works in marketing, drives a BMW, and look at those arms." I did look. Victor was undeniably attractive, with the kind of confident posture that came from knowing women found him irresistible. He was everything Edric wasn't: bold, attentive, interested. "You're married," Edric said quietly, his voice tight. "I know I'm married," I snapped. "I'm not dead. Can't I appreciate when someone appreciates me?" "Klytemne." "What? When's the last time you bought me a drink? When's the last time you looked at me the way he's looking at me right now?" Edric's jaw clenched. "We have a tab. I've bought you 3 drinks tonight." "That's not the point." I stood up, smoothing my dress. "The point is that someone over there thinks I'm worth pursuing. Someone thinks I'm beautiful enough to spend money on." "Sit down," Edric said, but there was no authority in his voice, only embarrassment. "Why? Scared someone might think your wife is desirable?" I walked toward the bar before he could respond, my heels clicking against the floor with purpose. Victor straightened as I approached, his smile widening. "You must be Klytemne," he said, his voice smooth and warm. "Sabine's told me about you." "All good things, I hope." "Very good things." He gestured to the bartender. "What are you drinking?" "Vodka martini," Extra dirty. As he ordered, I felt his eyes on me, appreciating every detail. When was the last time a man had looked at me like this? Like I was something precious, something worth pursuing. "So you're at Sabine's gym?" I asked, accepting the fresh martini. "Every morning at 6. Your sister's a machine on the elliptical." I laughed, a genuine sound that surprised me. "She's always been competitive, about everything." "What about you? Are you competitive?" There was something in his tone, a suggestion that made my pulse quicken. "Depends on what we're competing for." He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine. "Dancing, maybe. Your husband doesn't look like much of a dancer." I glanced back at our table, where Edric was sitting rigid, his hands clenched around his beer bottle. Sabine was talking animatedly, probably trying to lighten the mood, but his attention was fixed on me and Victor. "He's not," I admitted. "He thinks dancing is a waste of time." "His loss." Victor extended his hand. "Shall we show him what he's missing?" I should have said no. I should have thanked him for the drink and returned to my table, to my husband, to my marriage. Instead, I took his hand. The dance floor was crowded, bodies moving in rhythm to the pulsing beat. Victor pulled me close, his hand settling on my waist as we began to move together. He was a good dancer, confident and skilled, leading me through turns and dips that made me feel graceful and desired. "You're beautiful," he murmured in my ear, his breath warm against my neck. I closed my eyes, letting myself get lost in the moment, in the feeling of being wanted. Around us, other couples pressed closer together, the music building to a crescendo that seemed to match the racing of my heart. When I opened my eyes, I saw Edric standing at the edge of the dance floor, his face pale with anger and humiliation. For a moment, our eyes met across the crowd, and I saw something die in his expression, but instead of guilt, I felt vindicated. Finally, he was paying attention. Finally, he was seeing what he had. The song ended, but Victor's hands remained on my waist. "Another dance?" I looked back toward our table. Edric was gone. Only Sabine remained, gathering her purse and coat with quick, nervous movements. I started, but Victor's grip tightened slightly. "One more song," he said. "He'll be back." But even as the music started again, even as Victor pulled me closer, I knew Edric wouldn't be back. Not tonight, and maybe not ever. I woke up to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. My head pounded with the kind of hangover that comes from too much vodka and too little water, and for a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it came flooding back. The club. Victor. Dancing until closing time while Sabine cheered me on and bought round after round. Edric leaving without a word, the sound of our car starting in the parking lot, while I was still pressed against Victor on the dance floor. I was in Sabine's guest bedroom, still wearing my dress from the night before, my makeup smeared across her pillowcase. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Edric and 3 from my mother-in-law, Miriam. "Shit," I muttered, sitting up too quickly and immediately regretting it as the room spun. "You're alive?" Sabine appeared in the doorway with coffee and what looked like the world's largest bottle of ibuprofen. "I wasn't sure you were going to make it after those last 3 shots." The memories were hazy after midnight. I remembered Victor buying me drinks, his hands on my back as we danced, the way he'd whispered compliments in my ear that made me feel like I was 22 again instead of 32. I remembered Sabine taking pictures, laughing as I posed with Victor, his arm around my waist. "Please tell me I didn't do anything too stupid," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. Sabine's expression shifted slightly. "Define stupid." "Sabine. Look, you were having fun. You deserved to have fun. Edric was being a total buzzkill, leaving like that." "What did I do?" She handed me her phone and my stomach dropped. The screen showed her Instagram story from the night before, a video of me and Victor dancing, his hands on my hips, my back pressed against his chest as we moved to the music. The caption read, "When your sister remembers, she's still got it." "You posted this. It was just for my story. It disappears in 24 hours. But I could see the view count in the corner, 847 views. Sabine had over 2,000 followers, including half the people we knew from high school, our neighborhood, Edric's work friends. "Sabine, I'm married. I know you're married, but you're also a woman who deserves to feel beautiful and desired. When's the last time Edric made you feel the way Victor did last night?" I couldn't answer that because I couldn't remember the last time. Somewhere between buying our house and having Isla, and settling into the routine of work and school and soccer practice, Edric had stopped seeing me as a woman and started seeing me as just another responsibility to manage. "I need to go home," I said, standing on unsteady legs. "I need to talk to him." "What are you going to say? That you're sorry for having a good time? That you're sorry someone found you attractive?" "I'm going to explain that it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. Dancing with Victor had felt like waking up after years of sleepwalking. For those few hours, I'd remembered what it felt like to be pursued, to be desired, to be the center of someone's attention. The drive home in my Uber was torture. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every mile stretched endlessly as I rehearsed what I would say to Edric. By the time I reached our suburban townhouse, I'd convinced myself that he was overreacting, that any reasonable husband would understand that his wife needed to feel appreciated. The house was quiet when I let myself in through the front door. Edric's car was in the driveway, but I didn't hear the usual sounds of Saturday morning. No coffee brewing, no morning news, no shower running upstairs. "Ed?" I called out, kicking off my heels and padding toward the kitchen in my bare feet. I found him at the kitchen table, with his laptop open and a stack of papers spread in front of him. He looked up when I entered, and I was shocked by what I saw in his face. Not anger, which I'd expected, but something much worse. Disappointment so profound it made my chest ache. "You're home," he said quietly. "I stayed at Sabine's. I tried calling, but—" "I know. I saw the calls. Why didn't you answer?" He gestured to the papers in front of him. "I was busy." I moved closer, trying to see what he was working on, but he closed the laptop and gathered the documents before I could read them. "What's all that?" "Work stuff." "On a Saturday?" "Some things can't wait until Monday." The distance in his voice was worse than shouting would have been. I sat down across from him, reaching for his hands, but he pulled them away. "Ed, about last night. Don't. Let me explain." "Explain what? That you spent the evening dancing with another man while I sat there like an idiot? That you let him put his hands all over you in front of everyone we know? It was just dancing. Was it?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. Because it hadn't been just dancing, had it? It had been a declaration, a statement that I was still desirable, still worth pursuing, still capable of making men want me. "You left," I said instead. "You just walked out without saying anything." What was I supposed to say? Was I supposed to stand there and watch my wife make a fool of herself? Make a fool of me? I wasn't making a fool of anyone. I was having fun. Remember fun, Ed? Remember when we used to have fun together? He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the tile floor. "When we used to have fun together, it didn't involve you grinding on other men." "I wasn't grinding." "I have eyes, Klytemne. So does everyone else who was there last night." "So what? So I danced with someone. So someone bought me drinks and made me feel beautiful. When's the last time you did that?" "I tell you, you're beautiful." "When? When was the last time you told me I was beautiful? When was the last time you looked at me like you actually wanted me instead of like I was just another item on your to-do list?" He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or recognition. For a second I thought he might apologize, might admit that he'd been taking me for granted. Instead, he picked up his papers and headed for the door. "I'm going to pick up Asla. She has practice at 2. Ed, wait. We'll talk later, when you've had time to think about what you really want. The front door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone in our kitchen with the lingering smell of his coffee and the growing certainty that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. My phone buzzed with a text from Victor. Had an amazing time last night. Would love to see you again soon. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I should delete it. I should block his number and pretend last night never happened. Instead, I found myself typing back, "Me too." By Monday morning, the video had exploded beyond Sabine's Instagram story. Someone had screen recorded it and posted it to Facebook, where it had been shared 43 times. I discovered this while sitting in my cubicle at Henderson Insurance, scrolling through social media during my lunch break and feeling my stomach drop with each new notification. "Well, well, well," came a voice from behind me. I spun around to find Tasha Lynn, Victor's girlfriend, standing beside my desk with her arms crossed and fire in her eyes. If it isn't the dancing queen herself. I'd completely forgotten that Tasha worked in our building's accounting firm 2 floors up. We'd met at a few work mixers over the years, exchanged pleasantries about the weather and weekend plans. I'd had no idea she was dating Victor until she appeared at my desk like an avenging angel in a business suit. "Tasha," I said, quickly closing my browser. "Hi. Don't hi me. We need to talk." She was attracting attention from my co-workers, her voice carrying across the open office space. Janet from Claims Processing was already craning her neck to get a better view, and I could see Mark from Customer Service pretending to organize files while clearly eavesdropping. Maybe we should what? Go somewhere private so you can explain why you were all over my boyfriend Saturday night." "I wasn't all over anyone." "Really? Because I have about 50 people who shared that video with me, and it sure looks like you were all over him." My face burned with embarrassment. "Look, it was just dancing. It didn't mean anything." "Dancing? Is that what married women are calling it these days? Tasha, please, can we discuss this somewhere else?" She looked around the office, seeming to notice for the first time that we had an audience. "Fine. Conference room, now." I followed her to the small meeting room we used for client calls, my legs shaky with adrenaline. Through the glass walls, I could see my coworkers watching, whispering among themselves. This was going to be all over the office by closing time. "Sit," Tasha commanded, and I found myself obeying. "Victor and I have been together for 8 months, she began, pacing in front of the whiteboard like a prosecutor addressing a jury. 8 months of building something real, something meaningful, and then you show up and throw yourself at him like some desperate housewife having a midlife crisis." "I didn't throw myself at anyone." "No? Then explain this." She pulled out her phone and showed me the video again, and seeing it from this perspective, as the girlfriend of the man I'd been dancing with, made me want to crawl under the table. The woman in that video looked desperate, clinging to Victor like he was a life preserver, pressing herself against him with obvious hunger. It was just one dance. One dance that lasted 3 hours. One dance where you let him buy you drinks all night while your husband sat there watching. One dance that ended with you giving him your phone number. I didn't. But then I remembered the hazy end of the evening, Victor asking for my number, me typing it into his phone while Sabine cheered me on. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? Explain it to me, because I'm having trouble understanding how a married woman with a 7-year-old daughter ends up grinding on my boyfriend at a nightclub. We were just dancing. Stop saying that. Tasha slammed her hand on the conference table, making me jump. Stop minimizing what you did. You knew he had a girlfriend. Sabine told you we were together, and you decided to pursue him anyway. I didn't pursue him. He approached me. And you could have said no. You could have said, "Thank you, but I'm married." Instead, you saw an opportunity to get attention, and you took it, regardless of who got hurt. She was right, and we both knew it. I could have declined the drink, could have stayed at my table with Edric, could have been the wife and mother I was supposed to be. Instead, I'd chosen the thrill of being desired over the commitment I'd made 8 years ago. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Are you? Are you really sorry? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. Victor's name appeared on the screen, and Tasha's eyes narrowed as she saw it. "Go ahead," she said. "Read it out loud." My hands trembled as I opened the message. "Can't stop thinking about Saturday night. When can I see you again?" "Well," Tasha demanded, "it's not what it looks like. It looks like the man I've been planning a future with is texting another woman about their night together. What else could it possibly look like?" I stared at the phone, at Victor's message, at the evidence of my betrayal spelled out in black and white. "I'll tell him to stop contacting me." "You'll do more than that. You'll stay away from him completely. No more gym visits with Sabine, no more club nights, no more playing the victim because your husband doesn't worship the ground you walk on. You don't know anything about my marriage. I know enough. I know you're willing to destroy it for a few hours of attention from a man who is never going to leave me for you anyway." The words hit like physical blows. "What do you mean?" "I mean Victor likes the chase, but he doesn't like complications. And a married woman with a kid, that's about as complicated as it gets. He was using you for an ego boost, and you were too desperate to see it." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to insist that what Victor and I had shared was real and meaningful. But looking at Tasha's face, seeing the pain and anger there, I realized she was probably right. Victor had seen an easy target, a neglected wife looking for validation, and he'd taken advantage. "I need to get back to work," I said, standing on unsteady legs. "So do I, but Klytemne, if I see you anywhere near Victor again, if you respond to one more of his texts, if you even look at him sideways, I will make sure everyone in this building knows exactly what kind of woman you really are." She left me alone in the conference room, staring at my reflection in the black computer screen and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. Through the glass walls, I could see my co-workers pretending to work while obviously discussing what they'd just witnessed. When I finally returned to my desk, I found a printed copy of the video still framed on my keyboard. Me in Victor's arms, my head thrown back in laughter, looking for all the world like a woman who'd forgotten she was married. Janet from claims processing appeared beside my cubicle with false concern written all over her face. "Everything okay, honey? That seemed pretty intense." "Everything's fine," I lied, crumpling up the photo and tossing it in my trash can. "Well, if you need to talk." She let the offer hang in the air, her eyes bright with curiosity. I knew that by 5 o'clock, everyone in the building would know about my confrontation with Tasha. By tomorrow, the story would spread to other offices, other buildings, other circles of acquaintances. The video that had started as a moment of fun was becoming a scarlet letter I'd wear everywhere I went. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Edric. "Picking up Isla from school. We'll be home late. Need to think." I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, "We need to talk." His reply came immediately. "Yes, we do." The family dinner at Romano's restaurant was supposed to be a peace offering. I'd suggested it to Edric on Tuesday night, after 3 days of sleeping in separate bedrooms and communicating only through terse texts about Isla's schedule. My mother, Judith, was in town for her monthly visit, and I thought having family around might help us work through our problems like civilized adults. I was wrong. "So," Judith said, cutting into her chicken parmesan with surgical precision, "Miriam called me yesterday." I felt Edric tense beside me in the booth. Across the table, Isla was coloring on her kids' menu, oblivious to the undercurrents of tension flowing around her like toxic water. "Oh," I tried to keep my voice light. "What did she want to talk about?" "I think you know." Sabine, who'd been unusually quiet since we'd ordered, suddenly became very interested in her salad. She'd been getting strange looks from me all week, ever since I'd discovered that the video had spread far beyond her Instagram story. Someone had saved it and shared it, and I was beginning to suspect my sister knew more about that than she was letting on. "Mum, can we not do this here?" I glanced meaningfully at Isla, who was now listening with the sharp attention children develop when adults try to hide things from them. "Do what? Have an honest conversation about what's happening in this family." "Nothing's happening." "Don't lie to me, Klytemne." Judith's voice carried the authority of someone who'd raised 3 children and could spot deception from a mile away. "I've seen the video." My stomach dropped. "Mom." "Miriam sent it to me. She's worried sick about Edric, about Isla, about what this is doing to their family." "Their family?" The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "Isla is my daughter too." "Then start acting like it." The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too crowded, too public for this conversation. At the table next to us, an elderly couple was pretending not to listen, while obviously hanging on every word. The waitress hovering nearby kept finding reasons to refill our water glasses. "Judith," Edric said quietly, "maybe we should—" "No, Edric, someone needs to say this." My mother leaned forward, her grey eyes fixed on mine with laser intensity. "I raised you better than this, Klytemne. I raised you to honor your commitments, to respect your marriage, to think about how your actions affect your child. I was dancing, Mom, that's all." "Dancing." She said the word like it tasted bitter. "Is that what you call letting another man put his hands all over you while your husband watches? Is that what you call making a spectacle of yourself in front of everyone you know?" "Grandma, what's dancing?" Isla looked up from her coloring, her brown eyes curious and innocent. "It's nothing, baby," I said quickly. "Grown-up stuff. But why is everyone mad about dancing? I like dancing." "Finish your chicken nuggets," Edric told her gently. "We'll explain later." But how do you explain to a 7-year-old that her mother had humiliated her father in public? How do you tell a child that her parents' marriage is fracturing because one of them needed validation more than she needed her family? "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Judith continued, lowering her voice but not her intensity. "This child is sitting here listening to us discuss her mother's behavior at a nightclub. Do you understand how that makes me feel? How it makes Edric feel? How it makes you feel?" I could hear my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "What about how I feel? What about the fact that I've been invisible in my own marriage for years?" "Invisible? You have a husband who works 60 hours a week to provide for you, who comes home every night, who's never given you a reason to doubt his loyalty. How exactly are you invisible? When's the last time he told me I was beautiful? When's the last time he planned a date night, or bought me flowers, or made me feel like he actually wanted to be married to me instead of just obligated to be?" Sabine finally looked up from her salad. "Cly's right, Mum. Edric's been taking her for granted for years." "Stay out of this, Sabine," Edric said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You've done enough damage already." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means maybe if you hadn't spent the night encouraging your sister to make bad decisions, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation." "I didn't encourage anything. I just supported Klytemne when she needed to feel appreciated. By posting a video of her with another man on social media, by cheering her on while she destroyed her marriage. That's your idea of support?" The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. "You shared the video, didn't you?" I stared at my sister, seeing the guilt written across her face. "It wasn't just on your story. You sent it to people." "I thought it was funny." "Funny?" Edric's composure finally cracked. "You thought it was funny to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. You thought it was amusing to watch your sister make a fool of herself. She wasn't making a fool of herself. She was having fun for the first time in years." "At whose expense?" Judith demanded. "At the expense of her marriage, her daughter, her reputation." "What reputation?" Sabine shot back. "The reputation of being a perfect suburban housewife who never has any fun. The reputation of being so devoted to a man who barely notices she exists that she's forgotten she's still a woman." I notice her, Edric said quietly. Do you? When's the last time you took her dancing? When's the last time you planned a surprise for her or made her feel special? Or did anything besides come home, eat dinner, and fall asleep watching TV? That's not fair. Isn't it? Klytemne's been telling me for months how lonely she is, how invisible she feels, how much she misses being desired. And instead of listening to her, you're sitting here, acting like she committed some terrible crime. She did commit a crime, Judith said firmly, the crime of betraying her family's trust. By dancing with someone? By seeking attention from another man instead of working on her marriage? By prioritizing her ego over her responsibilities? By setting an example for her daughter that marriage vows are optional when you're feeling neglected? I looked around the table at my family, my mother's disappointed face, my sister's defensive posture, my husband's quiet devastation, my daughter's confusion, and realized that everything was falling apart. The video that was supposed to be a harmless moment of fun had become a bomb that was destroying every relationship I cared about. I think we should go, I said quietly. Yes, Edric agreed, already reaching for his wallet. I think we should. As we gathered our coats and prepared to leave, Isla tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, are you and Daddy getting divorced like Emma's parents? The question hit me like a physical blow. Around us, the restaurant seemed to go quiet, as if everyone was waiting for my answer. No, baby, I said, but the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. Mommy and Daddy are just working through some grown-up problems. But as I looked at Edric's face, at the distance in his eyes and the set of his jaw, I wasn't sure I was telling her the truth. The legal office smelled like leather and disappointment. I sat across from Edric at a polished conference table, a stack of documents between us that might as well have been a funeral pyre for our marriage. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Wells, arranged papers with the efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times before. Before we begin, Patricia said, adjusting her glasses, I want to make sure both parties understand that we're here to discuss a legal separation agreement, not necessarily a divorce. There's still time to work things out if both parties are willing to engage in good faith. I looked at Edric hopefully, but his expression remained stone-cold neutral. We'd barely spoken in the 2 weeks since the disaster at Romano's, communicating only through brief texts about Isla's needs. He'd moved into the guest bedroom permanently, and I'd caught him on the phone with lawyers twice, his voice low and serious as he discussed asset protection and custody arrangements. I'm willing to work things out, I said. That's why I'm here. Are you? Patricia consulted her notes. Because according to my client, there have been several incidents since the initial indiscretion. My stomach dropped. What incidents? Edric finally spoke, his voice flat and emotionless. Show her the photos. Patricia slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were printed screenshots from social media, posts I'd made over the past 2 weeks, comments I'd left on Victor's Instagram photos, messages I'd thought were private. This is from your Facebook account, Patricia said, pointing to a post I'd made 3 days ago. Quote, sometimes you have to remind people what they have before they lose it forever. Some people don't appreciate what's right in front of them until someone else shows interest. End quote. I remembered writing that post, fueled by wine and frustration after another silent dinner with Edric. It had seemed empowering at the time, a declaration of my worth and desirability. Seeing it printed out in black and white, it just looked petty and vindictive. And this, Patricia continued, turning to another page, is a comment you left on Victor Dane's Instagram photo yesterday. Quote, looking good. Some people know how to treat a lady right. End quote. Those were just, and this, she interrupted, pulling out another sheet, is a screenshot of text messages between you and Mr. Dane, provided by his girlfriend, Tasha Lynn. The messages were from 2 nights ago, when I'd been feeling particularly lonely and unappreciated. Me. I can't stop thinking about that night. Victor. Which part? Me. The way you looked at me, like I was the only woman in the room. Victor. You were, for me, anyway. Me. I wish things were different. Victor. They could be. Seeing the messages laid out like evidence in a criminal trial made my face burn with shame. They looked so much worse than they'd felt when I was writing them, so much more damaging to my marriage and my family. I never met up with him, I said desperately. We never did anything physical. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity, Patricia replied matter-of-factly, and it demonstrates a pattern of behavior that's destructive to the marriage. A pattern? It was one night of dancing and a few stupid messages. Was it? Edric spoke again, his voice heavy with pain. Because according to Sabine, you've been complaining about our marriage for months. According to your co-workers, you've been talking about how unhappy you are, how you deserve better, how you're thinking about what else is out there. I was venting. Everyone vents about their marriage sometimes. Do they vent to single men at nightclubs? Do they post passive-aggressive messages on social media designed to hurt their spouse? Do they continue texting with men they met while their husband was sitting right there? I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to explain that everything I'd done had been a reaction to feeling neglected and unappreciated, but looking at the evidence spread across the table, the photos, the messages, the posts, I realized how it all looked from the outside. I looked like a woman who was actively sabotaging her marriage, not trying to save it. What do you want? I asked quietly. Patricia opened another folder. My client is proposing a legal separation with the following terms. He retains primary custody of Isla, with you having supervised visitation every other weekend. He keeps the house and primary vehicle. Joint assets are divided 60-40 in his favor, accounting for the emotional distress and potential reputation damage caused by your actions. Supervised visitation? She's my daughter. She's a daughter who's been asking her teachers why her parents fight all the time, Edric said. She's a daughter who heard her classmates talking about a video of her mother with another man. She's a daughter who deserves stability, not chaos. I can give her stability. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more interested in getting attention from strangers than taking care of your family. The words hit like physical blows. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time you helped Idla with her homework without complaining about being tired? When's the last time you attended one of her soccer games without spending half the time on your phone? When's the last time you put her needs ahead of your own emotional drama? I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. Over the past few months, as my dissatisfaction with our marriage had grown, I'd been increasingly distracted, increasingly focused on my own unhappiness instead of my daughter's needs. I want to be a good mother, I whispered, then prove it, sign the separation agreement, get counseling, figure out what you really want from life, and stop dragging Isla through the wreckage of our marriage. Patricia slid the documents closer to me. You can take time to review these with your own attorney if you'd like, but my client is prepared to file for divorce if you're not willing to accept these terms. I stared at the papers, at the legal language that would dissolve 8 years of marriage, at the custody arrangement that would turn me into a part-time parent. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. The night at the club was supposed to wake Edric up, make him realize what he had, inspire him to fight for our marriage. Instead, it had given him the evidence he needed to walk away. What about counseling? I asked desperately. What about trying to work things out? I tried to work things out, Edric said. For months I tried to figure out why you were so unhappy, why nothing I did was ever enough, and instead of talking to me about it, you decided to seek validation from other men. One man, one night. One night that you've been reliving and romanticizing for weeks. One night that you've used as a weapon against our marriage every chance you get. He was right, and we both knew it. Instead of treating that night as a mistake to learn from, I'd treated it as proof that I was still desirable, still capable of attracting attention. I'd used it to justify my resentment toward Edric, to validate my feelings of being unappreciated. "I'll sign," I said quietly. Patricia made a note on her legal pad. "We'll need your signature in several places and then—" "No," I interrupted. "I mean, I'll sign, but I want one thing changed." "What's that?" "I want joint custody, 50-50. I'll do counseling. I'll delete all my social media accounts. I'll cut off all contact with Victor, but I won't accept supervised visitation with my own daughter." Edric and Patricia exchanged glances. After a long moment, he nodded. "Fine, joint custody. But if there are any more incidents, any more drama, any more evidence that you're putting your emotional needs ahead of Isla's well-being, I file for divorce and full custody immediately." "Agreed." As I signed the papers that would legally separate me from my husband, I realized that my quest for attention and validation had cost me everything I actually valued. The marriage I'd been trying to save through jealousy and manipulation was over. The family I'd taken for granted was broken. And for what? A few hours of dancing with a man who'd never had any intention of leaving his girlfriend for me anyway.